By the time you finish this video, you'll see a future that's a lot closer than you may think. See, there's a certain type of musician who's vanishing, completely going extinct. And if you've ever felt that tug of uncertainty as to where you fit in all this, then this might be the most important few minutes you spend all year. See, because right now, there are only two paths that musicians are faced with, and you have to decide which one you're going to go down. There's the path of adapting and rising to our circumstances to learn what needs to be learned. And then there's the other side where musicians are getting left behind and they're waiting and hoping and praying that the cheese comes back. I don't know if you guys have ever read that book, Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson, but it's one of those books that exemplifies perfectly the predicament of the musician. See, back in the day, the cheese used to be labels, right? We would go out to clubs and we would play gigs because we hope an A&R agent would catch our set, report back to a label, and then our career would take off, right? And that used to be where the cheese was. And so, in fact, many musicians started forming bands and heading down to their local venues to try and really get their shot. They started moving to places like Nashville, Los Angeles, and New York, trying to be in the hot spots where these A&R agents would be looking so that they would increase their likelihood of their chances of making it. However, as we got out of the mid-2000s and we started going into the 2010s, and now we're into the 2020s, pretty much inching up on 2030s, that's not how things are anymore. In fact, many musicians are still going out there expecting the cheese to be in the same spot. But there's another group of musicians who have figured out that the cheese have moved and have figured out how to adapt to those circumstances and rise to the occasion. So in this video, I want to share with you the musicians that I feel like are actually going extinct and how you can look out for these character traits so that you can avoid them and start to become more like the musicians who are going to be around for the next 10, 20 years. Because it's my honest opinion that the musicians who meet the criteria I'm about to go over are probably not going to be around by the end of 2026 with how fast things are exponentially increasing. So the first type of musician that really needs to be careful and needs to change, and we need to look out for it to not associate with these musicians really, is the Hail Mary mindset musician. This is the musician that says, I don't need to learn the business. There's someone else out there that will do all that for me. And so what happens is their career moves end up being one after the other attempts to think these kind of thoughts. If I just get a manager, everything will be okay. If I just get a booking agent, my career will take off. If I just get signed to a label, then everything will be fine. Well, having paid for all three of those services, or had people on my team for all three of those services, I can tell you flat out that that is not the ticket that you're thinking it is. I've been signed to 2 record labels, one with a distribution deal, one with a full temporary exclusive license while they were signed with us, and we had the right to revoke that license at any point after a certain period of time. I was with a manager who we were paying $300 a month. I think that should have been the first red flag. Because, put it this way, if you're at a lower point in your career, you don't have anything to manage, right? You don't have opportunities knocking on your door every single day. So a traditional manager would typically take 20% because they're like, listen, you've got all these opportunities at your front door. You can't even deal with them all. Let me deal with them all, get you the best ones, and then I'll just take a little cut of it. Well, if you got nothing going on, they're like, I'm not going to make 20% of $5. I'm going to need some guaranteed money that I'm actually going to get paid and have some food this week. So it just doesn't make sense to rely on, let's say, a manager to make your career happen for you. The labels will do what they can, but I can tell you with confidence that even the big labels haven't quite figured out the new style of marketing. They are still operating from the Coca-Cola perspective of advertising because they have the money to be big brand, institutional, image-based advertisers. Musicians like you and me who are DIY, doing things independent, because I'm not with those labels anymore, that was a complete dumpster fire. Some good experiences, some bad experiences, but we can't rely on having a $100 million budget of advertising. We just can't, right? So a lot of labels don't even understand the type of marketing that works nowadays. And so you get signed up with a label, you're pretty much just guaranteeing that you're going to do the same old tired out marketing, which has an even lower chance of succeeding than it did 5 years ago, right? So, and this was something that happened to me like 10 years ago, fundamentally. Okay, so the first problem is this Hail Mary mindset, this idea that if I just get hooked up with the right industry person, they're going to do all the work for me, and I really don't need to learn the business because, hey, they'll take care of it, right? So that's a problem because really that's robbing you of the correct vehicle that's going to get you success. You're thinking potentially, like I did, that the success vehicle that you need to be in is signed with a booking agent. I got signed with a booking agent who sounded perfect on paper. I was like, listen, man, some of us have families, so can we just do like 75 shows a year, roughly $300 a gig minimum, and then if we can get more, we can negotiate for that. They're like, wow, you guys are really reasonable. We can totally pull this off. We have another band who we book like 280 shows a year with. And I'm like, oh, perfect. Well, this is just going to be great. You know how many shows he got us that year? He booked 11, 7 of which we actually got to play. So people can make promises up and down, till next Thursday, but that doesn't mean they're actually going to pull through on it. And we've looked at many booking agencies that would actually take us at that particular stage in our career, and that was a lot of the same issue, right? Is promises, unkept promises, and hearing the same things from people that had been signed to these agencies. So you have to really be careful of the Hail Mary mindset. That's something I talk about in detail in my book, The Musician's Dilemma. You can check out that in the description if you want to. But the whole idea is having this idea that if I just I'm just going to keep chunking the ball into the end zone, chunking a 100-yard pass, hoping that I'm going to win the game in the end. I don't know if you've ever played Madden or NCAA and just tried to chunk Hail Marys the entire game. If you're playing with any array of real-life difficulty, that's just not going to work. You're going to lose terribly. That may pull off. You may get a touchdown every now and again, but the other team is going to smoke you, right? So we can't play our music business that same way. We have to play our music business in a way that we can actually guarantee a higher likelihood of results. And the way that we do that is learning the direct marketing strategies. It's specifically what I refer to, and it's known in the industry as direct response advertising, which is advertising that's designed to get people to respond, whether that be liking, commenting on your videos, whether that be joining your email list or text list or coming to a show, buying some merchandise, whatever it happens to be, getting them to respond to the words you've put in front of them. That is the skill set. That is the vehicle that can take you as a musician into professional territory where you're actually gaining some income, right? But if you try to stay in this old way of thinking, you're never going to get off the freaking ground. And I'll tell you right now, that's the hardest part, is going from 0 to 100. Going from 100 to 1,000, 1,000, 2,000, 2,000 to 4, and so on and so on. Like, that gets easier as the game gets bigger. Economy of scale starts to work in your favor. But the trickiest part for most musicians is getting off the ground to that first level, right? But the way you're going to get there is by being in the right vehicle. And direct response is the right vehicle, but you can't get to that place if you don't think to yourself, I can learn business. It's worth learning business, and it won't ruin my relationship with art. In fact, that's the whole premise of this book, is how to balance business with your art so that you still love the art while being really good at the business side of it. I use the yin-yang as sort of a beautiful analogy of how business and art really work together. But there's a huge issue. This is the second thing I think people need to know, which is there's a horrible anti-entrepreneurial mindset that has existed inside of the music community for far too long. And it really doesn't make sense, because what it does is it creates this internal tension where people think to themselves, they go, oh man, I can't do this whole business thing because business is evil, right? You think a lot of musicians don't understand how the business works. And there are a lot of musicians who are learning how the business works, because they don't. However, there's a lot of musicians where learning how the business works is not really the problem. It's them implementing what's necessary because they've been indoctrinated to believe that all business is evil and there's no ethical businesses whatsoever, and therefore if they treat their music like a business, they're participating in some evil system, where that's just completely factually untrue. If you want to think about it in the most clear-cutted, accurate way of thinking about it, business is neutral, right? Business can be used for good and it can be used for bad. Just like a knife. A knife can be used to cut up a beautiful cooked steak, or it can be used to, poke somebody, and that's a really bad thing. Now, is the knife the issue? No, it's how you're using it. So when you think about your business, it's a very similar kind of thing. Yes, there are ways that you could somehow, I guess, try to turn your music business into some weird, like maybe turn it into like a pyramid scheme or something. Like, I don't know. But guess what? Does that mean that by doing business, you're creating a pyramid scheme? No, it means just like, hey, if you don't like pyramid schemes and you think they're unethical, because they are, don't make one. Make the opposite of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, think about a personal fitness business. This is a business where people who have already paid for all the equipment, that if we really wanted to have a home gym, we'd have to go buy all that equipment ourselves and spend thousands of dollars on it. Well, they're like, listen, I spent tens of thousands of dollars on the equipment. You just pay me a few bucks a month and you can come here every day if you want to use it. Oh, okay. And now people have access to tools that can help them get into better shape, look better, feel more self-confident, have more energy. That is an ethical business, right? So now think about it this way too. Even in the example of a gym, you could have an ethical business that operates in the model like I've just told you, but then you can also have like Planet Fitness, where a big chunk of their business is actually, a big chunk of their net profit comes from the fact that hardly anybody uses the equipment. And so they actually engineer their marketing to attract the people who are less likely to actually come to the gym, but most likely to sign up for a subscription. Now, to me, that's a weird, unethical, like it's unethical to me, but that's a preference thing. I know that some people may not see that as unethical, but just like kind of shady, maybe. Like there's degrees of it. I don't know. I just think that like if you're going to be a gym, be a gym. No, they're like, no, I'm going to figure out how to be a gym, have all the equipment there, but it's going to last forever because no one's going to use it because the only customers I'm going to attract are the people who will never use it. And if there are customers who come in who do like to use things frequently, we're going to install things that actually push them out of the gym. That's their business model. So even within gyms, you could say there's an ethical and a slightly non-ethical business model for just within gyms. So think about your music business. If you're an ethical person, then your music business is going to be ethical because you're going to conduct yourself in congruency with your character. I mean, money, in my opinion, does not change people. It exposes people. That's really what it does. Like, if someone is a disciplined, kind, caring person, then you will see that discipline and that kindness and that care exuded in them even with wealth. But if they were never that to begin with and just use that as a facade to appear righteous and morally virtuous in front of their friends, then as soon as they get what they want, you're going to see exactly their true nature. Right? I think that's very analogous to, things happening right now. But I just think that it's an easy thing for people to understand because of that. Like, just think of that. Like, when something happens that they want to happen, you'll see how they truly are. Right? So you have to look at business from this neutral perspective where you're thinking business is not really an ethical or non-ethical thing. It's just a tool. Just like a knife is a tool. Right? That's what we need to look at. It's like, okay, if this business tool is in front of me, how can I learn how to use it in a way that's going to actually help me get the results I'm looking for, but do it in a way that's like the chef using the knife to cut up a fresh steak as opposed to someone using it to, poke somebody, so to speak, right? So I think we need to get rid of this anti-entrepreneurial mindset that exists in musicians because it's ultimately preventing us from having the internal consistency to actually act on the information that we're learning. See, I know a lot of musicians are learning a lot of things. They're getting a lot of information. We talked about this in another video. They're consuming a lot of information, but they're not implementing very much. Well, sometimes the thing that's preventing people is overwhelm. There's like too much to implement and they don't know what to focus on first. So if that's you, check out that video. But a lot of musicians, more than you'd think, it's not that they don't know what to do. It's just that they're kind of like, content, I've got these ideas about what content means. So if I create content, I'm now participating in this narrative that I've created in my head that that's a bad thing. So now I'm participating in a bad thing. You see how they psych themselves out of doing things. And that's one of the biggest issues, is they start saying, this isn't important. I don't even really need to focus on this. I'm actually more ethical if I ignore it and just focus on the music, which is great if you're a hobbyist. But if you're a professional, that's literally that's the opposite path of the goals that you purport to have if you desire to be a professional. Now, the third thing that we need to really address, which is kind of tied into this anti-entrepreneurship kind of mindset, is musicians who are addicted to comfort. Okay, now think about it like this. Like, think about the phrases that the type of musicians I've been bringing up through this video probably think a lot. I don't need to learn the music business because someone else will just do that for me, right? So they avoid learning business because they think someone else should be responsible for it. Then they learn that that's not the case, but then they say, well, I shouldn't have to learn it because, well, even if someone else is supposed to take care of it, like, I can't take care of it because it's unethical, it's evil, right? Now the question that, or not the question, but the thing that people who are addicted to comfort will say is like, well, I can't learn the business because, there's just too many external factors. It's just too hard. There's algorithms and there's dead internet theory. Guys, be quiet about the dead internet theory. Are you on the internet? Are you watching this video? Then the internet's not dead. So just stop. Yes, there are a bunch of bots on the internet for sure. And that's probably going to get more and more the case, which means verification tools and labeling AI content is going to become more of a thing to kind of decipher out what is actually, a real person from a non-real person. But get off this dead internet theory. I see comments about it all the time in my comment section from a ton of different people. Why are you focusing on that? Instead of just focusing on the fact that I think what happens is people think that because they try to convince themselves that it's okay to not pursue business because, well, if the dead internet theory is true, then if I was to do that stuff anyway, I would be posting to bots and not even real people. They've convinced themselves that it's like this, I hate to say it this way, because there's good people who I know kind of subscribe to this thing, is that it's like a form of denial. Like, almost like it develops this sort of solipsistic view that, oh, well, there's actually no one else on the internet, because if there was anybody on the internet, they would clearly recognize how good I am and would be viewing my content. There's a lot of, people don't realize there's ego under a lot of the things that are on the surface level, like, oh, poor me. But really there's ego underneath it. And this is something I had to do with myself many, many, many times, looking at my beliefs and saying, am I thinking that? Is that true? Or is there something deeper there going on? And a lot of the times there is something deeper, where musicians are like, well, clearly the dead internet theory is true because I post content regularly and no one's engaging with my content. So clearly no one's on the internet. It's like, you see how kind of in our own world and not really thinking about the reality of the situation we have to be in to think those kind of things. There are billions of people on the internet. Guess what though? Because there's so many people on the internet, the algorithms are like filters and sifts. Right? And so that's why our content doesn't always reach people, despite there being so many people on the internet, is because algorithms will sift us out sometimes. But how do we counteract that? Making content that can speak more directly to our ideal fans so the algorithm knows, oh, it's, when I say sift, it doesn't just like chunk the rest. It tries to find a place for it. The algorithm wants your content to do well. I know this is something that like a lot of musicians are like, no way. Yes way. The algorithm wants your content to do well, because the better your content does, the longer it keeps people on the platform, right? They want you to do well. But if it doesn't know where to put your stuff, if you didn't create a piece of content that it can easily categorize, and that when it categorizes it doesn't easily speak to the people for whom it puts it in front of, we're toast. Right? So what do we do, Dax? What do we do? You keep going. You keep testing. Because you'll have, this is what it looks like. This is really what it looks like in real life to post consistently. And I'll just use view counts, even though that's kind of a vanity metric. I'll just use that for a rough benchmark for this. It'll be like 250 views, 300 views, 150 views, 250 views, 300 views, 250 views, 10,000 views, 800 views, 250 views, 350 views, 650 views, 20,000, 650 views, 1,000, 200. Like, that's what it really looks like. But most people, instead of going through the iterations where they post the 200 video, the 500 video, the 300 view video, they won't even go through the reps. They'll stop after the first 250 video and go, I'm dead internet. Like, guys, you gotta keep going. I have failed more times than I've succeeded. Alex Hormozy has this great quote about this, which it's like relevant to music, because everyone always talks about musicians who are like industry plants because they just blow up overnight. I'm like, the fact you think that they blew up overnight is evidence that nobody sees your failures. Do you understand? Like, the fact nobody knew you until you blew up overnight means all those failures you're worrying about happening, no one sees anyway. They only recognize you when you finally figure it out. Do you understand? Most people are so... If there's any legitimate fear in losing, it's when you win a bunch and then start losing. It's like the idea of like, what hurts worse? The fact that you haven't made $1 million yet, or if you made $1 million and now you're only worth $10,000. Like, that second one hurts more, obviously, right? But most of us are in a position where we're still trying to get, in this analogy, that first million, and we're so scared about the failures that we're going to make on the way to that we're not taking action to actually get us more likely to hit that result. And so you have to remember that no one's going to see those failures in the end anyway, because they only remember the success. And to be honest with you, in the grand scheme of things, they don't remember the success for very long either. But while you're in the spotlight, you've got your time to seize and get as many people into your fan base as possible, so that whenever your spotlight in the peak of your potential exposure is done, you've got enough people that you've taken with you that you can now have a career for the rest of your life, right? So don't be afraid to fail. It's hard, yes, but it's beatable. It's like a video game, guys. I know this sounds like I'm trivializing things, but like, business is like a video game. It really is. And it's a hard video game on a very strong difficulty level. It's Dark Souls, but eventually you'll get through it. Like, it may take you a while. For some people, they just blow right past it. And do most people say like, oh my God, somebody beat this game in, 4 hours. I can't ever beat it. I just suck. Like, I'm not going to play the game. Like, some people do, but those will be the musicians, for example, who go extinct. And the musicians who are going to win are the ones that keep playing the game. It's just I know it sounds simple, but a lot of things in life we overcomplicate. It's that whole idea is like, you can't lose if you don't quit. Think about this, like, I'll give you another analogy. Think about the stock market, right? Let's say you buy something, like you bought some Apple, and then Apple goes down the next day. Did you lose money? Well, on paper, but have you actually lost money physically in the real world? No. You only lose when you sell, right? A lot of our careers are like a stock market price, right? You only lose when you sell when you haven't won yet, right? You've got to give yourself time to like have that comeback moment, right? Like, you can't lose if you don't quit, right? So don't sell yourself short. Don't sell yourself too early and say, I can't do this or whatever. Believe in yourself. You can do more than you think you can do. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that whenever you first started to play an instrument, I bet it was daunting, whether it was singing or a physical instrument that you play. I bet it was a little bit scary. I bet you saw how good people were. I bet you saw how good other people had gotten a lot faster than you, maybe at the same age as you, or younger. But guess what? You pushed through, and you are now a musician. You can do the same thing with business. Comparison will just kill your joy. Right? If you're going to use comparison, use it to help give you data to fuel you to do better. Don't use it to drag you down and create this like comparison bias where you're thinking, I'm not doing this well because I haven't done it as quickly or as good as somebody else. Okay? So the three main personalities, characteristics to avoid are Hail Mary mindsets, anti-entrepreneurial mindsets, and this addiction to comfort by thinking like, oh, if it's difficult, then I guess I'm not built for it and I can't do it. It's like, hey, playing guitar wasn't comfortable when you first started to do it. Playing the drums is not comfortable when you first start to do it. Singing definitely ain't comfortable the first time you try to do it. But does that mean we shouldn't do it? I'm telling you right now, like I learned this from one of my mentors, Myron Golden, is that not everything that feels bad is bad. And not everything that feels good is good, right? Shoving our face full of chocolate bars feels good, doesn't it? but it's not good for us, right? Just like going to the gym, does that feel bad? Yeah. Going to the gym feels bad, but is it bad for you? No. Actually, that pain that you feel makes you stronger. So don't think that just because the music business is tough or that it's been difficult, that your muscles are sore from working out, that you're not growing and getting better, okay? So have some faith in yourself, give yourself some grace, and avoid those three mindsets of thinking either, I don't need to learn the biz because someone else will do that, right? Because you're just throwing Hail Marys at someone else who will do it. Or thinking, oh, I can't do business because it's evil, and avoid that anti-entrepreneurial mindset. Or thinking, I can't do the business because it's too hard, and being too addicted to comfort and not actually understanding that uncomfortability is what gets you to have the ability to have success. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, hit the subscribe button, the notification button, all that good kind of YouTube-y stuff. If you want to, you can pick up a copy of The Musician's Dilemma by clicking the link in the description. But more importantly, if you want some one-on-one help setting up these direct marketing systems and these direct response systems inside of your music business, click the link that's in the description to set up a free one-on-one call with me to see if we can help you in your music business. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you on another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.